This day started with a shocking discovery. As usual, I sent Steve to get some coffee, and on his way, he noticed something weird on the wall. Yesterday, there was nothing special there, but as soon as he raised his head, he... Steve didn't have to be scared so much, since out of roughly 1,300 bat species, only 3 are vampires. That is, they drink blood. But let's focus on this one. The common vampire bat is the most numerous and best-known vampire bat species. They do pretty much what you would expect from creatures that drink blood. They approach a sleeping victim at night, pierce the skin with sharp teeth, then lap up the blood with their long tongue. In short, the only thing missing here is a cape with a stand-up collar. But we're just scratching the surface. When you start digging deeper, you discover really interesting facts about them. Creatures that look like violent, bloodthirsty monsters? Well, let's face it, bats have a bad reputation. Actually, the common vampire bat is one of the most socialized bat species on the planet. And they don't just stick together in family groups like many other animals. Ordinary vampire bats make friends. Of course, the friendship between vampire bats is not like the friendship between people. The former needed to share blood. Sounded like one bat was offering the other to drink its blood. No, it doesn't work like that, but I'll cover this a bit later. In the meantime, why share blood at all? Apparently, we're talking about cooperation, which ensures the survival of the entire colony. See how it works? Each bat has its own food donors network, and the more often an individual shares blood with others, the more donors it has. With many donors, the bat can easily survive losing one of them. So more generous bats may do better in the long run. The more friends, the better. Making friends certainly takes some time. First, one animal must prove to the other it's reliable enough. More trust between individuals means more complex interactions. The bats seem to gradually step up their efforts in order to eventually reach the stage where they can exchange food. For example, at first they lick each other's fur, getting closer to each other. After all, this doesn't take a lot of effort, but the longer this kind of bonding lasts, the more likely the vampire bats are to become friends. And friends share food with each other.
Joey doesn't share food!
Well, most of them. After all, for vampires, sharing blood is not the same as when you offer someone your sandwich. Without blood, a bat faces certain death, a really quick one. And yes, this is true for every living creature. Without a source of energy, we die. But it happens too fast when it comes to vampire bats. They have to feed at least once every 3 days. So every night hunt is like a gamble. You either get food or stay hungry, and your clock continues to tick, bringing you closer to inevitable death. 3 consecutive nights of failure means almost certain death. Unless, of course, there's a loyal and generous friend around who's ready to regurgitate some blood into its companion's mouth. I agree, that does sound nasty. But remember how birds feed their nestlings? Bats do roughly the same. The regurgitated blood will obviously not be enough for a good meal, and both animals will stay slightly hungry, but this will sustain them enough to live and hunt another day. When survival's at stake, you have to make do with little. And you know what I thought? There must be some freeloaders among the vampire bats, the ones who have a pretty good life. They don't hunt, they get food from their friends or family, giving them nothing but scratches in return. Or was it licking? Maybe they also collect food from several bats in one night, eventually getting the largest meal in the colony. Turns out, bats are not so easily deceived. It's been suggested that during bonding, a bat can check the size of its mate's stomach to determine if it really needs to eat. The colony remembers that cheaters, bats that refuse to share with their hungry neighbors, afterwards, these greedy individuals suffer the consequences of their selfishness. Most likely, they can expect no help in difficult times. Eventually, 3 days without food lead to... well, you get the idea. Okay, I admit it, it's not exactly a friendship between bats. It's more like mutually beneficial cooperation. Though in the wild, that's how it works, even if one of the friends is a human. This is a honey guide, a small bird, usually brown, that lives in Africa and Asia and doesn't seem special. But it's probably the only real friend in the wild we have. What are the benefits of this friendship? The cooperation strategy is quite simple. People want honey, birds want bee grubs and wax, but they don't want to deal with bees. And anyone who's ever been stung by a bee could understand them. Anyway, the birds lead humans to the honey. and soon the two species part ways, happier than when they met. From a biological point of view, this is called mutualism. And you can say honey guides use us for their own selfish purposes. And that's okay. Now let's see how birds and people work together. I must say right away, no one trains honey guides. Rather, they train us. The birds somehow figured out they can make some kind of trade deal with us, and even learned how to give signals to honey hunters. When I saw this line in the script, I imagined a honey guide on a tree like, "Psst, psst, hey you want some honey?" And you know, it's not way off the mark. Birds make, I quote, sneaky, chirruping call, fly up to the face, and then dart between the trees, showing the way to the beehive. After people collect honey, honey guides will only have to feast on what's left in a destroyed beehive. But people wouldn't be people if they didn't figure out how to first make contact. You have to admit it's a bit inconvenient to wander back and forth every time you want honey, hoping the birds would also be hungry. So the honey hunters use special sound signals to show their partners they're eager to follow. But as I said, no one has trained honey guides, so they're the ones who choose which humans to lead to the hive. Or maybe not lead anyone at all. I don't like these humans. Give me some other ones. Actually, honey guides aren't that picky. The researchers found that when a special call was used, about 75% of the time, the honey guide successfully led humans to the hive. The ability to produce the characteristic call that attracts birds is passed down across generations of honey hunters. Can we assume that honey guides actually understand what people are saying? I think so. Well, there's no guarantee that in bird language these sounds mean "lead me to honey," and not something like "all birds are cool and humans are fools." Maybe honey guides laugh at these sounds every time, and we don't even know about it. Who cares? While birds train humans and bats share blood, in a smaller world, friendship has reached a new level of weirdness. Actually, can we call it a friendship when it comes to refusing help? So Megapanera analis is a predatory ant species that literally specializes in raiding termite mounds, and of course such raids result in casualties. Worker ants often lose limbs, however these injuries are not always lethal. Wounded ants are carried home by their nest mates who then lick their wounds. Soon, disabled ants can run as fast as their healthy kin and even take part in raids again. If you also imagine pirate ants with wooden legs, let me know in the comments. Sounds pretty cool. However, when scientists managed to take a closer look at the ants, they noticed one weird thing. The ants helped only those who weren't seriously injured, but not because healthy ants promoted natural selection for their comrades. Seriously wounded insects themselves refused to be treated. Instead of tucking their legs in and lying still, the wounded ants were twitching until their rescuers give up. Now, this is really weird. I mean, why would injured ants reject help? Could they think this makes no sense? That it's better to help those who can still be saved and stuff like that? Well, almost. This theory is sometimes discussed in scientific circles, but ants are unlikely to make conscious sacrifices. The insect is probably trying to follow a clear algorithm. Get up, call for help by releasing pheromones, and then let the nest mates carry it. But when it comes to seriously injured Megapanera analis, problems come already at the first stage. The injured ants simply can't stand up, so they twitch, and other ants can't really help. The result is, well, expected.
Snake, are you okay? Snake? Snake!
But all this doesn't mean ants aren't capable of self-sacrifice at all. Moreover, some put their lives on the line even if there's no danger around. Just imagine, this happens every night in the colonies of the Brazilian ant Forelius bacillus. At the sunset, the ants close the entrance to their nest, leaving 1 to 8 workers outside. These are not some random victims, but part of the strategy. While the rest of the colony is safe, the doomed ants cover the nest with sand until it's completely concealed. But what about the abandoned ants? Seems like they just have to accept their fate. During the night, the ants are blown away by gusts of wind, attacked by other species. Some simply run away. Anyway, when morning arrives, there's no one near the nest, and in the evening, it starts all over again. Of course, there's a reasonable question. Why do ants act like that? According to Olav Ruppel, a biologist at the University of North Carolina, self-sacrifice may have become a routine part of life in Forelius bacillus colonies. These ants are particularly vulnerable to attack. Forelius bacillus build their nests on bare soil with little plant cover, plus they live in tropical areas that tend to be crawling with other ant species, which are way more aggressive. No wonder scientists say an ant's worst enemy is another ant. All in all, Forelius bacillus ants have to take extreme steps to protect their home and colony. Compared to all this, 8 doomed ants are nothing. A small but necessary sacrifice, and the insects hardly feel any remorse about this. Ants, of course, are very smart, but not smart enough to develop empathy. Well, as far as I know. I think I'll have Steve look into this matter. See you later.